Story 1. My 36M wife, 36F, is accusing me of trying to emotionally steal my son, 12M, from her. Please help. I have been married to my wife for 15 years now. We married in our senior year of college. Upon graduation, she worked for 3 years to help pay for our finances while I was in law school. During my last year of law school, my wife got pregnant with our son Zane. After his birth and my graduation, I found work at a big firm out in NYC. I began making a good 6 figures, and my wife asked if she could become a stay-at-home mom to help raise our son. I agreed with her and told her I would cover the house finances. We've never had any issues with this. True, I would work long hours, but she understood. The house would always be clean, and there was always food ready when I got home. It was a great dynamic. The only issue was that I rarely saw my kid. Zane was usually asleep by the time I got home because I would get home late. Zane and his mom are close because they spend a lot of time together. Fast forward to 2020 and COVID hits. During COVID, firms, including the one I worked at, moved to remote work. I was happy. I could work from home and spend more time with my wife and kid. Zane loved it. He would bring his Legos and toys into my room and sit on the floor and play near me. We could talk and have a good time. At the beginning, my wife was happy about it. She liked seeing us together, and she would join in the room too. Me doing my work and them hanging around. However, if everything stayed great, I wouldn't be writing this. It's been 3 years since 2020, and my firm still allows remote work, so I still take advantage of it. Zane still comes in to play on his Switch or iPad and even do his schoolwork in there while I work. My wife doesn't join us anymore, she just sits in the other room watching TV. So a few nights ago I asked her if everything was okay, and she got loud and mad, which she has never done before. She began accusing me of stealing Zane from her. How it used to be the two of them laughing and having a fun time. But now all he wants to do is stay near my office, or in my office. I was shocked. I told my wife that he is my kid too, and that with me here, we can all spend time together unlike how we couldn't before. She said I was trying to emotionally steal her son from her. I reminded her that he was my son too, and I deserved to be around him as much as she did. My wife began crying and packed an overnight bag and decided to go stay with her sister. I was left dumbfounded at how south everything had gone in this conversation. It's been 3 days since she left, and her texts have basically been dry and basically asking me to go back to working on site in my firm. I don't want to have to do this, as I'd much rather work from home closer to my family. I've spoken with her sister, and she says that she sees no issue in what I am doing and said she will try to reason with my wife. I told one of my friends, and he asked if it was possible that Zane wasn't my kid, and my wife was feeling guilt seeing us together. I told him that wasn't possible, not only because my wife has never shown any signs of being unfaithful even while dating, but we did a paternity test for safe measures. That was the lawyer part of me that wanted it. We also have security cameras in and around the house due to 2 security incidents a few years ago. My wife never leaves without texting me, and nothing is off at home. We also share each other's locations on iPhone, so I doubt there's an affair being covered up. He also still spends a lot of time with her and likes to go with her when they go out. Zane is wondering where Mom is, and I am left really confused. Has anyone ever dealt with this before? Any thoughts on what I should do? TEOLDR. Since COVID, I've been working from home. Wife doesn't like that my son is around me a lot and thinks I'm emotionally stealing him from her. Relevant comment. CJ, Nebraska, 1982. What does your wife do all day when Zane is in school? Does she have friends or hobbies? It truly sounds like she has some personal issues, and she is using your son as a scapegoat to cover them up. OP. She does have friends that she visits or they come over. As far as hobbies go, she likes cooking and pastry baking. She used to love having Zane sit in his chair by the kitchen counter, and she would let him taste her new recipes and pastries. While Zane is at school and I was working in office, she would do house stuff like cooking, cleaning, then watching TV or looking up culinary ideas if she is not going out with her friends. She still cooks and bakes, even with us at home, and in those moments she is happy because Zane likes cooking with his mom, so he is with her when she does. Yet Marionetka. You were married with no reason to suspect infidelity and still required a paternity test? Assuming this is real, you need couples counseling, because both of you are approaching the relationship in an unreasonable way. To you. Like I said, it was the lawyer in me trying to cover all possible bases. I merely suggested it, and she was totally fine with it. She had no issue with it. I don't know why some people see the asking of a paternity test to be some large act of betrayal. If it's yours, everything is fine. If not, then you know. This was 12 years ago. It hasn't been an issue ever in our relationship. Nothing in this relationship has ever been approached in an unreasonable way. Fun homework. 3,456. A big part of your wife's identity is that she's a mother. You earn the money, she raises the kid. You're stealing that from her by parenting more actively. Her reaction is totally inappropriate, of course. But the solution might be for her to get a job or a hobby or more friends. She could also learn to parent together, instead of separately. I told him that wasn't possible, not only because my wife has never shown any signs of being unfaithful even while dating, but we did a paternity test for safe measures. That was the lawyer part of me that wanted it. We also have security cameras in and around the house due to 2 security incidents a few years ago. My wife never leaves without texting me, and nothing is off at home. We also share each other's locations on iPhone, so I doubt there's an affair being covered up. It sounds like there's a lack of trust in your marriage. The paternity test would be incredibly insulting to most women, and her never leaving the house without texting you is really odd and concerning to me. OP. I plan on making an update a little later since I spoke to my wife and got where she was coming from. If current me were the me back then, I wouldn't ask for a paternity test. But back then, I was a student working in family law, and I kept hearing cases where people found out they were raising children that weren't theirs, and people telling their spouses during arguments that they never actually loved them. I got a bit paranoid, I'll admit. As for the texting without leaving, that's something we both started doing. I'll text her whenever I leave the office, even if it's for lunch. It's NYC, and we've both been mugged before. I got mugged right outside my office before. So we do it so that if anything happens, we know where the other last was. Update August 4th, 2023, 2 days later. Good update. I went to speak with my wife the night I made this post. I went over to her sister's house to try and understand why she said what she said. Upon seeing me, she immediately began crying and asking me to forgive her, and that she was sorry that she said what she said. Apparently, she had talked with her sister, and her sister tried explaining to her that our son was growing up and becoming more independent. The majority of the comments on the original post were right. She had been a Psalm for the past 12 years, but now that our son was exploring his independence, she didn't know what to do and felt lost. I asked her what caused the big blow-up, and she said that our son had told her that he wanted to stop doing the weekly baking Saturdays with her, as he wanted to instead start watching college football with me. His school is also asking them to explore their extracurriculars for next year, and my wife wanted him to do a cooking extracurricular that the school provides. He told her he didn't want to do that and wanted to start playing football. Important to note that in my office that I said my son spends a lot of time in, there is a lot of my football memorabilia. I played in high school, as did my brother and my father. Now I had a few trophies and a state championship ring that Zane liked to hold and look at. No, I didn't play in college. I was a backup on the team. Basically, what did it for her was that Zane started to ignore all the old hobbies they did together and wanted to align himself with my interests. She felt the connection between them weakening. She was in tears the entire time she was speaking. I listened to her and understood where she was coming from. It can't be easy to have your identity be attached to one thing and then have that one thing change. I asked her why she was gone for 3 days. She said that she didn't mean to be gone for this long, but that when her sister mentioned she put all her identity into our son, she thought it would be a good idea to be away for a few days and give herself some separation. I told her that he will always be her son and that she will always hold a special place in her heart, that no matter how old he gets or how his interests change, he will always need his mom. He's just changing, and part of our jobs as parents is to embrace that change and support him. She came home with me that night. She hugged Zane and cried, telling him that she was sorry for leaving. I took your advice and suggested family counseling, marriage counseling, or individual therapy. She said she would like to put off the first two for now, but did ask for help finding a therapist for her. So that should help. I suggested her getting a job or something that she can do so that her entire identity isn't being a mom. She said she doesn't like her college degree, so I told her to back to school if she wants, and I'll foot the bill. She is planning on doing culinary school and wants to open a YouTube cooking channel, and I told her I am behind her 100%. She also wanted to start working at her friend's bakery, so she will be starting there next month. I also suggested group family time so that the three of us do more family activities. I'm also asking Zane if he would want to do designated mom time and designated dad time. He can do activities with his mom and I can do activities with him. He asked me to help him practice football, so I'm thrilled to do that with him. We also decided that mom and dad need to have their alone time, so he is going to get more free time to himself. The past 2 nights have been great, and I'm happy seeing my wife happy and back home with us. Thank you guys for all your support and comments. A few answers to things in the comments from last time. Why does my wife have to text me when she is going somewhere? She doesn't. We both text each other out of our free will. It is NYC, and we have both been mugged before. This is a protective measure, so we know where the other is in case anything happens. Why did I ask for a paternity test if I knew she didn't cheat? When she gave birth, I was working at a family law clinic my last year of law school. I had to be around a couple who were finding out that their children weren't actually theirs years later, or having to hear how people didn't actually love their SO. It made me a bit paranoid, and my wife understood that, which is why she was okay with me requesting one. Was it stupid? In hindsight, yes. And if current me was the me back then, he definitely wouldn't have asked for one. TL Dadar. Wife was having identity crisis with our son growing up and changing. Working on helping her find new work. Wife back home and everything is good so far. Story 2. Aida for threatening to kick my maid of honor and her partner out of the bridal party 10 days before my wedding. A bit of background. My MOH is my best friend from high school. For the sake of this post, her name will be Livy. Since the beginning of our friendship, I have known about Livy's traumatic background that has caused her to have severe PTSD, anxiety, and depression. I too came from a rough background and we bonded over shared trauma. Livy has a tendency to isolate herself from everyone around her when she is extremely overwhelmed and or depressed. About a month and a half before the wedding, she stopped talking to me. After about a week of her not responding, I went over to her house to check in on her. She explained to me what she was going through, and I was right there to listen and try to help to the best of my abilities. She kept speaking to me for a few days, and then stopped again. I gave her some space, but I needed her to be at a meeting with my wedding manager to go over some fine details for the wedding. She showed up and started speaking again for a few days. Then she stops again. I give her some more space because I don't want to overwhelm her even more than she already is. 2 weeks go by and my family hosts a bridal shower for me. She swore that she'd be there. 30 minutes after it starts, I don't hear from her. I call her and text her, but there is nothing. After I had called her a second time, her boyfriend shows up at the door with a gift. He explains that Livy isn't doing too well today and she's been having extremely bad panic attacks all morning. I let it be and give her the day. The next day, we had a meeting set for all the bridesmaids to get together at my home and go over details such as hair, makeup, shoes, times ECT for the big day. I had texted her all morning trying to see how she was doing and if she would be there tonight. I called her several times through the day with no luck. My fiancé, also a good friend of hers, also called her to check in with no luck. Finally, about 30 minutes before the meeting was supposed to start, my fiancé calls her BF and tells him that he is on his way to come get her for the meeting. The BF explains that they are actually at a B-Day party for someone in his family. BTW, the meeting was set up a month prior as to make sure it was set in everyone's schedules. My fiancé at this point was getting extremely angry, and I was having a meltdown because another one of my bridesmaids also wasn't responding to me. The other bridesmaid lost her phone and forgot about the meeting. Livy went for another week without speaking to me. Exactly 2 weeks before the wedding, I sent her this text. Hey girl, I understand that you are struggling, but with the wedding 2 weeks away, I really need communication when you need help. I feel like I am losing you, and I don't want that. I love you, and I will always be here for you. I need to know that I can count on you too. Crickets for the next few days. Yesterday I tried to call her several times with no answer, so I went to her home to check in on her. We waited for about 10 minutes outside. We could hear them inside, and we called both her and her BF to see if they were okay. Finally, I left. I spoke to my wedding manager, who is also my uncle, to get his opinion on it as well as my mother. Both of them said that I only get one wedding day. I need to focus on my happiness right now. They both advised me to send her a text saying that if I don't hear from her or her BF by a certain day, I need to move forward. The show must go on. I ended up sending this message to her. Hey, I know that you are struggling right now, and if it helps, we can take the responsibility from the wedding off of you, and you can be a guest. You are my best friend, and I'd love to have you at my wedding, even if it means that you are just a guest. Please let me know by Friday at 7 p.m. if you'd still like to be in the bridal party. If I don't hear from you by then, I will have to move forward, and I will see you as a guest at the wedding. I really don't want to lose her as a friend, but I really need someone who I can rely on because the wedding is in 9 days. Ada for threatening to kick my MOH and her partner out of the wedding party? Is there something I could have done better? Ada has no consensus bot. OP was NTA. Relevant comment. Commenter 1. I feel like parking outside of her house for 10 minutes trying to get her to talk to you was probably wildly triggering her PTSD. Did you ever ask her what you could do to make the MOH role fit? Or did you just keep doing the same things and asked her to talk more? OP. I have tried to make it clear to her from the start that I do not want to overwhelm her with this responsibility that she has accepted. When I visited her the first time, I asked if she needed any change to her role as MOH, such as if she needed a break from wedding planning for a minute, or if she needed any of the other bridesmaids or myself to help her with anything. She told me that she could handle it, and also told me that she would let me know if she needed help. Did MOH do anything to help with any of her duties? OOP. She helped me make a few decorations for the wedding, and I was told that she bought everything for the bachelorette party, but it was supposed to be this weekend. She kept changing the plans for it and hasn't said anything for 2 weeks about it. At this point, I've messaged the other bridesmaids and informed them of what's going on. Is it possible that MOH's boyfriend could be controlling her? OOP. I'm not sure. They both have extremely complicated backgrounds and bad trauma. His is honestly worse than hers in some ways. I think that they may be struggling to put two traumatized people in one home, but I honestly don't think they are too healthy for each other. OOP on being accused of prioritizing her wedding over MOH's mental health. OOP. At this point, it's not just about my wedding, but also my mental health as well. Currently, I have a million things going on with my health and everything else. It's not good for me to be crazy stressed because it causes physical issues that can be dangerous. I need someone that I can rely on to help relieve some of this stress from myself. I was trying to give her some space so she didn't feel extremely overwhelmed. Update, December 10th, 2024, 1.5 months later. Hello, everyone. It has been a month since mine and my husband's wedding. Everything is going beautifully, and we cannot be happier. The wedding was beautiful with only a few hiccups along the way. Another one of my bridesmaids was extremely helpful to us and stepped in as MOH. She really didn't have to do much except for be at my side because she is physically unable to do much strenuous activities due to her pregnancy. All of my bridesmaids were beautiful and extremely helpful to me on our big day. As for Livy, I haven't heard from her since I sent the text letting her know that I needed to hear from her. The day after the deadline for us to hear from them, I messaged her BF Dan, directly letting him know that he was still welcome to attend our wedding as a guest. We had a long conversation going back and forth, and we ended on good terms. The next week, we went to a friend's Halloween party, where Dan was present. There he confided in me that Livy was getting too toxic for him, and he was going to ask her to move out. From what I have heard, it didn't end well. He was hoping they could stay together, but live separately in hopes of mending their relationship. When she moved out, She had taken his laptop with her, and the last time they spoke he asked for it back and she pretty much spat in his face. Livy has cut off all contact with what used to be mutual friends, which has put a strain on them. Dan did end up going to the reception, and it was nice to see him there. My husband and I speak to him every so often to try and keep touch so he doesn't feel alone in this point in his life. For those who are wondering, Dan and I spoke about what I could have done to make Livy act in such a way. He told me that she vented to him a lot, and told him about how she was fed up with my husband and I. But because he is also a friend, he chose not to listen to much else she had to say about us. The reason he wasn't speaking to us was to try and save his relationship with Livy. I have removed Livy as a friend on all social media platforms, but I still have her number saved just in case she ever wants to talk it over. Again, we share trauma experiences over S3 $1 alt, and I never want anyone with those experiences to feel alone with. They have their times when they are struggling. Thank you all for your advice from my last post. I hope you all have a wonderful holiday season. Top comments. Commenter 1. You were extraordinarily gracious under pressure and did everything possible to give her every opportunity to be part of your day, and all she had to do was maintain some basic decorum, but she couldn't do it. You absolutely made the best choice by separating her from her responsibilities and position in the wedding party. So happy to hear you had a wonderful day and hope you have many, many more years after this. Commenter 2. I hope he gets his notebook back, but seems so yuck to get it now that she must have done something to damage it. Congratulations on your wedding. Remember to call your MOH often to ask about her baby and appreciate her more. OP. Always. We talk at least once a week. She is such a sweetheart, and she will make a fabulous mother. I'm so excited for her and her journeys ahead. Story 3. Ata for not letting my stepsister borrow my wedding dress? Throwaway in case people involved are in Reddit. Me, F23, got married to my husband about a year ago. It was wonderful and probably the happiest day of my life. My family was involved with everything, and I was delighted by it, including my stepfather, who at first I had a somewhat rocky relationship with, but I grew to appreciate him. His daughter, F26, is an entire different story. We can't get along. I've tried, and I'm sure she also has, but it's not about being different. It's because she has always had very similar taste as me. We used to fight about our clothes, our toys, and so on. She has a relationship with a man whom I've got to know maybe 3 or 4 times. She announced her relationship with him during my wedding, which annoyed me at first, but I let it go since it was only a 20-second PSA, and became engaged just 4 months after that. Now, she has been planning her wedding, and I've tried to help as much as I can since I already had most contacts fresh. She plans to marry a day after Christmas, so I thought everything was set and ready to go. On Saturday, she calls me crying, saying that her wedding dress wouldn't arrive on time since she had some changes done. For some context, no one knows how this dress looks because she wanted to keep it a surprise for everyone, per her own words. I tried to comfort her, and I told her I knew some cute boutiques who had nice wedding dresses ready for her date. She cries harder, telling me she didn't want any cheap dress. I tried to calm her down once more before telling her I would call my stepdad to see what we could do. Before I could finish that sentence, she says out of the blue, "Can I wear your dress?" I didn't respond because I didn't know how to. She goes on, explaining that it would make things less troubling, how she's the same size as me, and how much she loved it the second she saw it on me. I don't know what possessed me to simply say no and hang up the phone. I've received multiple calls from her fiancé, and my stepdad, who I did respond to. He pleaded to me to let her borrow my wedding dress, just like when we were kids. I tried to explain to him that my wedding dress was very special to me, and I wouldn't feel comfortable letting anyone else in it, unless it was my decision. He got super angry with me and hung up. My messages have been exploding with my stepsister, her soon-to-be husband, and my stepdad telling me how horrible I am for being so selfish. I know how my stepsister is. I know how dramatic and over-the-top she can be when she doesn't get her way. But there's a part of me that feels awful for not letting her wear it since it's just a dress and it would make her so happy. But there's that other part of me that remembers how my husband, my mom, and I struggled to save for it because it was my dream dress. and I don't want to share something so personal with her. Should I just let her have it, just so things don't escalate? Some of OOP's comments. Commenter. NTA. I'm calling shenanigans on your stepsister's part. She probably had her eye on your dress since day one, probably commissioned a similar dress, if she even did, hence the surprise, and planned to use your dress as a backup if hers didn't show up in time. OOP. I never wanted to assume things, but this is where I'm at, too. I'll talk to her tomorrow and try figure things out. OOP is voted NTA. Update. I'll go see her now. I'll update when I get home. Update, same post, December 10th, 2024, next day. Update 2. Well, that happened. I arrived at said coffee shop just in time. She took half an hour to get there. I talked as gently as I could with her, explaining how I didn't want her to wear my wedding dress and why, since it was so emotionally attached to me. She went absolutely nuts. She called me a selfish cow, telling me how I'm the most horrible human ever. I tried to calm things down until I just couldn't do it anymore. I knew this was a possibility, so as soon as she started crying, I pulled out her wedding invitation and gave it back to her. I told her I wouldn't be attending the wedding, but I hoped it all went perfectly. Her voice couldn't get louder at this point. She threatened to come to my house and take it from me. I simply left the coffee shop without saying another word, and now I'm home. Story 4. My 40F husband, 45M of 20 years, says he no longer wants sex. How do I tell him I can't live without it? We haven't had sex properly for a few years. I've wanked him and blown him a few times, and he's fingered me to orgasm a few times, but that's it. He's been to the doctors, and his testosterone levels are good. We've been to couples therapy, single therapy, and sex therapy, but nothing has worked. He just says he's never in the mood for sex and can't be bothered. He only works part-time, which was his choice, and I work full-time. We have no problems or any other problems. So there's nothing I know of that is ruining his sex drive. About a week ago, he came to me and said he'd appreciate it if we didn't talk about sex anymore. He doesn't need or want it, and he's not interested in it at all anymore. I've tried to talk to him to ask if it's me in the past, and he said no, he just doesn't feel the need for it. The thing is, I do. I'm desperate for it. I don't want to cheat, and I don't want to lose him, but I can't for forever without it. I need to ask him if I can have sex outside the marriage, but I don't know how. TLDR, husband says he no longer needs sex, but I do. Does OOP have kids? And ask about open marriage? OOP, we don't have kids. I want to ask for an open marriage, but I don't know how. Commenter 1. Have you told him that you don't want to go without sex for the foreseeable future? What scenarios would you be comfortable with for getting your needs met? What would he be comfortable with? Have the discussion. The two of you will either find consensus or decide to separate amicable. UP, I've told him I can't go without it. I like it and need it. He just said you need to learn how to go without. Is OOP or her husband religious? OOP not religious. Commenter 2. Let me ask you a question first. Or maybe questions. Is lack of sex truly your only issue? You mentioned how he's working part-time by his choice. It's he contributing his half of work to the relationship. Did all your therapy not turn up anything but no sex? If you got permission to go out to a bar and have one-night stands to have sex and then immediately come home, would that solve everything? Or would you be wanting affection and romance with your sex? So you still have enough love for your husband that if someone is offering you sex and the possibility of love, you'd still choose him and walk away from the sex. OP. He doesn't like the people he works with, so being part-time helped relieve his stress. We split the housework. He's loving in other ways and we still cuddle up and watch TV, etc., but he just has no interest in sex. It sounds stupid as I can get myself off, but I just want to feel a man's body against mine and inside me. Self-love isn't enough. How did OOP and her husband met? OOP. He was a friend of a friend. I approached him and asked him for his number and then texted him asking if he wants to go out sometime. I don't see the relevance. Update. November 28th, 2024. Thank you everyone for your support and messages. It means a lot. Well, it's 6 a.m. here, and we spent 4 hours talking about it last night until he stormed off to stay at his friend's house. That's how well the talk went. Just to clear a few things up from my original post. All his levels were above average for his age when tested, and the doctors concluded there is no medical reason for his lack of libido. In bed every night he sleeps naked next to me, and I can see and feel he is physically able to get hard. People ask me if he was depressed, and I don't think he is, but you never truly know what is happening in someone's head. He said his last job was stressing him out, so we agreed that he would just work part-time. On that subject, a few people have said I'm only with him for his money. Well, I earn £70K a year, and he earns between £10–15K a year, so no, I'm not. People asked if I had got fat. My weight has never been more than 5 pounds difference, up or down, than the say we met, and I'm currently 9 stone 6, 132 pounds to my American friends, at 5'7" tall. I've got big boobs, so they have gotten a bit saggier, but I can't help that. I was asked about frequency. At first we fucked a lot, then within 5 years it was down to once a month, and now the last time we have full sex was 4 years ago. Last time he fingered me was 2 years ago, and I gave him head 3 months ago. People asked if he's cheating, gay, or watched porn. I've searched his phone and never seen anything to suggest that. He's not secretive with his phone at all. Over the years I've told him if he wants to explore his sexuality or other people he can. I've offered him threesomes. I've told him I will do anything sexual he wants, nothing is off limits. He wasn't interested. So last night I sat him down and told him, I know you don't like talking about this, and I respect the fact you don't want sex anymore, but I do. So either open up the relationship so I can get my sex somewhere else, or I'm leaving. That brought on hours of ranting and raving. I'm a sex addict. I'm a slag. I don't love him. I've got no respect for myself, etc., etc. I stayed calm and said, you either need to tell me why you don't want to have sex with me, let me have sex outside the marriage, or we'll split up as we aren't compatible. Are you asexual? Gay? Depressed? Just don't find me attractive? He said it's none of those things, he just doesn't enjoy sex. It's boring, and he's got no interest in pleasing other people either. He'd just rather wank. When I asked him why we had so much sex at the start, he said it was just to shut me up. I said, you've slept with over 50 people, but you don't like sex? He said he did it because everyone else, and he was trying to find it. There was a reason everyone enjoyed it, but he realized she just didn't. I wasn't sure I believed him, so I said, fine, if that is true, I'll never bother you for sex again, but can I please have sex with other people? You can even choose them if you want to make you more comfortable. You can be in control of it all. Just pick someone for me a couple of times a month. You can even watch if you want, or we can keep it completely separate and you'll never know anything. I won't tell you when I'm having sex or who with. I don't mind what the arrangement is as long as I can have sex. He just said, no fucking way, and stormed out the door to his friend's house. So that's where we are. He's obviously told his friends, as I've had messages from some of them saying I'm a slag and a cheater. I messaged my husband just now after he didn't answer the phone even though he's awake and said, you leaving and getting your friends to gang up on me tells me everything I need to know. I'll let you decide whether you want to stay in the house or not, but if you choose to stay, I will only be paying for my half of the mortgage until it's sold. Then you're on your own. I don't care what you tell people, I have all the proof of our problems over text message, as you are a coward, and that's how you communicate. Goodbye, Daryl. It's heartbreaking, but I can't carry on feeling disrespected, and the fact he has his friends insulting me and harassing me is too much. Feels like he's one step away from Peaky Blinders' post on social media about how silent and strong he is. So that's where I am. No answers on the sex problem, and there is no way I'm staying with after the name-calling, storming out and harassment by his friends. I don't know what more I could have done for this man. TLDR, tried talking and it didn't go well. Relevant comment? OOP needs to make sure she's safe from her husband and his friends. OOP, I'm not scared of him or his stupid little friends. I'll make sure my brother is here if they ever want to come over. He definitely just told them I want to open the relationship or I've cheated. No way have they got the full story. Commenter 1. Seems like he's the issue, especially after telling all his friends and twisting what's been going on. I think it's easier to say you shouldn't leave a marriage or relationship because of lack of sex, but this is so much more. He's a very selfish person, as it seems like he's happy to just sort himself out but isn't willing to put any effort into helping you or work anything out. OP. That's it. Every few months he'll ask for a blowjob and he won't even act interested. Last time I started to get naked to do it and he said, Don't waste time, just do it, so I'm giving him a blowjob while crying, and he didn't even put his hands on unheard or act interested, he just looked at his phone while I did it. Commenter 2. So he is asexual? At least in the sense that he doesn't like sex, but still wanks. Anyway, he's not understanding you nor trying to address your needs, so that's probably it for the relationship. OOP. I still have a sneaking suspicion he's gay rather than asexual. Story 5. Ada for laughing in my mother's face when she said my stepsister planned my 18th birthday? Original post, Undit, November 27th, 2024. A little background. My mom and dad separated when I was 6, and each went their separate ways. Of course, they had joint custody of me, but they both started new families. When I was 9, my mom married a man, let's call him Robert, who already had a daughter, let's call her Kira, who was 2 years older than me. My dad got engaged when I was 8 to a wonderful woman, let's call her Layla, who he married when I was 12. My relationship with Layla is beautiful. She has truly been a mother to me. She basically helped my dad raise me. She takes an interest in my life. She comfort me. She advise me. We have common interests and we do many activities together. She and I recently talked about the possibility of having her legally adopt me as soon as I come of age. Doing so now would be a bit messy legally because of my parents' joint custody, because, for me, she is my real mother, and I want it to be official. My relationship with my bio mother, on the other hand, is almost non-existent. Even though I was forced to spend specific days with her, we never managed to bond because she spent all her time giving attention and affection to Kira, who already have her own mother. Even when she tried to involve me in some activity, she always included Kira, and we had to do only what Kira liked. At a certain point, I started to decline her invitations and often asked if I could avoid going to her on the set days because I was almost always ignored or left aside, and I preferred to stay at home with my father and Layla. My father always tried to understand me, but he also had to honor the rules set by the judge. When I got more mature, he admitted that he was afraid that my mother might make some mean move in court if he agreed to not let me go to her on the appointed days. Yeah, this is something my mother would do. After knowing this, I understood my father's reasons, and I absolutely don't want to put him in trouble, so I didn't make such requests anymore, and I respected my schedule. Now, let's get to the point. In 2 weeks, I will finally turn 18. I was lucky because my birthday falls on the days I have to stay with my dad, so he, Layla, and I started planning my birthday a month ago. It will be nothing too crazy, just a party with family and friends at my favorite pizza place. A casual night where I just want to have fun with the people I care about and do what I like. The place also has karaoke and I love singing. Of course, after booking and setting everything up, we sent out the invitations, and this extended to my mother as well. Honestly, I didn't really want her there, but then I thought that this would actually be the last time I was forced to be involved with her because once I turn 18, I won't be forced to follow the judge's rules anymore. So we sent out the invitations 2 days ago, and we already had almost all the answers, so we could organize the precise number to send to the pizza place. The only thing missing was my mother, who saw the text and did not respond. I told my father that I would not insist, and if she did not respond, then it meant she did not want to come, and I was fine with that. I think my father was also a little relieved by the idea, even if he didn't say it openly, but I could see it on his face. Anyway, the drama started this afternoon. My mother called me, very angry, accusing me of being childish and that I shouldn't have planned anything without telling her first. This left me a little confused, and I reminded her that I always planned all my birthdays with Dad and Layla. Most of the time she didn't even remember, so complaining now was quite hypocritical. This made her even angrier and started attacking me because Kira had been crying ever since I sent the invitation to my mother because she had already planned a whole birthday party for me. And I was really speechless because the relationship between me and Kira is zero. She is the classic spoiled brat who always wants to be the center of attention, and my mother has always supported this behavior of hers, making it worse, and clearly she and I have never gotten along. I just didn't understand why the hell Kira wanted to organize a birthday party for me. It didn't make sense. I asked her why she did it, and especially why she did it without telling me. I mean, She didn't really think I wouldn't make any plans for my 18th birthday, right? It was ridiculous. My mother said it was supposed to be a surprise, and since I didn't tell her about my plans, she thought I didn't want to do anything for my birthday. And I mean, she could have asked? No? No. But here comes the worst part, and I admit the one that made me lose my cool. My mother started listing all the things Kira had prepared for my party, maybe to rub in my face what I would have missed. And they were all Kira's favorite activities, things that I didn't like. She had booked a fish restaurant for launch, and I don't eat fish. Not because of some whim, but because it makes me feel sick. Just smelling fish makes me feel nauseous. I'm not allergic. I had it checked. My body simply rejects it. She also booked an afternoon activity at a ranch near the city where my mother now lives, where you can ride horses and, well, I don't like it. I have nothing against horses in particular, but the idea of riding one or getting really close to an animal that big scares me. Then she thought about going back to my mom's house for a backyard barbecue for dinner, and I just don't want to do that because I don't want to spend more time with my mom than I have to. My mother also said they had already sent out invitations to everyone. And at that point I was really speechless, but I had to ask her who she had sent them to, because my friends, my dad and his family hadn't received anything. It turns out that at the party was mostly invited to Robert's family, my mom's family, and Kira's friends. I mean, it was basically a party organized by Kira for herself, but under the pretext that it was for my birthday. So, I didn't hold back anymore. I laughed in my mother's face and hung up the phone. It was all too ridiculous to be true, come on. My dad came to me a little while ago, saying that my mom called him mad because I laughed in her face when she told me about the party they had organized for me, and he was very upset about it. He was starting to say that despite all the feelings I had for my mom, they were trying to do a nicer thing for once, but I stopped him right away and explained in details how the party had been organized, a detail that my mom apparently left out with him. His expression changed quickly. He just said, "I'm going to make a phone call," and I've been hearing him yelling at my mother for at least 20 minutes by now. Layla came to me after learning about the situation and said that as much as she could relate to me, I was a little rude to laugh in my mother's face and hang up without explaining. For her, I should have spoken out like an adult despite my feelings and sort things out in a civil and mature way. She wasn't angry, just a bit disappointed about how I acted. As soon as she left, I thought about my actions. And maybe I was a little hasty, but I don't think talking to my mom about it would have helped honestly. But maybe I could have handled it better? I'm starting to think I was a bit of an asshole in that moment. ATA has no consensus bot. OOP received the majority of NTAs. Top comments. Commenter 1. I mean, what did she, the bio mum, think was going to happen? You were going to grovel and accept the crumbs being thrown your way? Answer is she wasn't thinking. She was just going along with Kira, same old, same old. The thing is, people like that just rely on people like you to just keep on keeping on without any sort of pushback. And when the inevitable pushback happens, they can't handle it. Could you have been more polite? Yeah, probs. Was it fully justified? Oh, hell yeah. You are not the $1 hole. This internet stranger is proud of you. Proud of the way you sucked the situation up and just dealt with it when you had no choice. Proud of the way you have formed a close relationship with your father and stepmother. And proud as hell for you standing up for yourself. Best wishes for a wonderful birthday. Commenter 2. NTA. You laughed because the absurdity hit comedy gold levels. Your stepsister planning a party that's literally an anti-you festival under the guise of your birthday? That's sitcom material. You're not obligated to feign gratitude for something that was clearly not meant for you. If anything, your reaction might finally get through to them that you're not just a side character in their family narrative. Keep your birthday plans with your dad and Layla, and enjoy turning 18 with people who actually pay attention to what makes you happy. Commenter 3. You are about to be an adult. Not only exciting, but it sounds like things will get better for you since you can decide who to spend your time with. Sounds like your mom and stepsister are just attention seekers. Update: November 29th, 2024, 2 days later. Okay, I didn't think my post would get all this attention, welp. But thank you all for the good wishes and words of comfort. I read all your comments and decided to follow some advice. First of all, I talked to Layla about my reaction to my mother. Layla raised me on the importance of communication and always pushing me to talk about my problems so I could solve them, so I see where her comment about my behavior came from and I understand it. But I also gave her my point of view. Telling her that the situation my mother was explaining was too absurd and laughing is the only natural instinct that came to me. While my mother was talking at some point, I thought, is it a joke? Or some sort of bad prank? Is she making this all up? Because her bullshits was absolutely ridiculous. Layla said she understood me. And as many of you have told me, she just wanted me to understand that there will be situations in my life where I can't just laugh and hang up the phone, and she was just worried about my reaction. Anyway, we managed to clear the matter between us, and I'm happy. I also talked to my dad about the phone call he had with my mom. Apparently my mom had an excuse for everything. She said that Kira just wanted to do a nice sisterly gesture on my big day, that she wanted to share her hobby, riding horses, with me, and that she never thought my fish problem was a real problem, but just a whim, and the restaurant they had booked at made the best fish around. And that last one is a lie because, when I was little, I threw up a couple of times in front of my mom just because we went somewhere that smelled strongly of fish, so she know very well it's a real issue for me. My dad retorted that nothing they had prepared had been done for me, that Kira had clearly planned the party for herself, and what kind of party was it for me if none of my important people were there? My mother didn't respond to this. She just started ranting that I was ungrateful and spoiled, so my father told her to go to hell and hung up the phone. After hearing this, I decided to follow another piece of advice you gave me and wrote a message to my mother. This time I decided to be mature and wrote the message in the most polite way possible. I apologized for laughing, but what she was saying was too ridiculous, so it was the only possible reaction from my side. I reminded her that she never put any effort into building a relationship with me, that she doesn't know me at all, and has never cared about getting to know me. And since the birthday party Kira organized only had things that Kira liked, they could enjoy it together with their family and friends. I also told her that her invitation to my pizza party was withdrawn, and she shouldn't bother showing up since she had already made it clear with the last phone call what her priorities were, and now I was going to do it too. And she was absolutely not on my priority list. I already have Layla as a mother, and I can't be more happy with her. I concluded by wishing her well with her new family and asked her not to contact me again. She read the message but didn't respond, and I'm fine with that. If she were to respond, I'm sure it would just be more complaints about me being ungrateful and spoiled. Because I know that talking to her is useless, she would not understand or pretend not to understand. But clarifying things once and for all has put an end to our situation. At least on my side, I had a sort of closure, and I thank you all for that. I probably would have given up and ended contact with her after my 18th without said anything. But your comments helped me understand that a firm end was necessary. For those who asked how my mom could throw me a surprise party when I wasn't with her, my dad asked her the same question, along with asking her how she could think he wouldn't throw me an 18th birthday party. My dad took it a bit personally, LOL, and she said they had planned for Robert to come get me the morning of my birthday, explain the situation to Dad and Layla, and then take me to Mom's house under some pretense. Honestly, I don't know how it would have worked. I would have flat out refused to go to my mother's if it wasn't our set days, no matter what excuse they would have made up. And most of all, I would never have left Layla and Dad to go to Mom's on my 18th birthday. It would have been one thing if my mother and I had a good relationship, but that was definitely not the case. In all of this, the only person I don't feel like blaming is Robert. We never had a close relationship, but he was always polite to me when we lived under the same roof. He even cleared out his study so I could have a permanent room in his house when I went to my mother's. We didn't develop any stepdaughter-stepfather bond, but he always tried to be kind to me, so I don't blame him for any of this. It's likely that he really thinks the party is for me. We don't know each other well enough for him to know my tastes unless my mother told him, which I highly doubt she did. Luckily, I didn't leave anything of mine at my mother's house either. All my things are here at my father's house permanently. Usually, I would pack my suitcase when I went to my mother's with the things I needed for those days and then bring them back when I went back to my father's. I never felt safe leaving anything to her because Robert's family and Kira's friends came over often, and I didn't want to leave anything of mine out in the open to strangers. Well, that's it for now. I hope my mom respects my wish to go no contact and doesn't bother me anymore after that. I'd also like to bring up the adoption conversation with Layla after the holidays. She seemed really happy when we first talked about it. Thanks again, everyone, for your kind words and advice. Your insights have helped me better manage the situation. I can understand that I'm still a little immature, but I feel that this experience has helped me grow a little more and see the issue from other points of view. All the best for you guys. Relevant. Comment. Commenter 1. OP. I would send a polite message to Robert as a courtesy to thank him for his kindness and consideration over the years. Then wish him best of luck, implying a permanent goodbye. OOP. I thought about it, but I don't have his number. We never felt the need to stay in touch as our interactions were mostly casual chit-chat and good morning/evening/goodbye. I don't have Kira's number either, so I think Robert and I already said goodbye for good the last time I left my mother's house. Commenter 2. Do you have any sort of relationship with your birth giver's family, and if so, what do they think about your birth giver's treatment of you? I think you handled this situation perfectly, far more maturely than your egg donor. OP. I don't really have much contact with my mother's family. They are just 3 people: my grandmother, my aunt, and my uncle. My uncle lives a few hours away from here with his family, and I've seen him very few times during the holidays I spent with my mother, and our interactions were very brief and distant. With my aunt and my grandmother, I only have a cordial relationship. We exchange holiday greetings by text. A few times they've sent me gifts for my birthday, always money loaded onto my father's card. But that's it. Even the few times I've met them, we had casual conversations about how each other's lives were going, but nothing more. In fact, I haven't invited any of them to my 18th, and they haven't texted me anything since the drama with my mother happened, so I think they just don't care that much. Commenter 3. You handled this situation with maturity and clarity, setting firm boundaries. Layla seems like an amazing support in your life. Wishing you the best moving forward. Story 6. Aita for not wanting to walk her down the aisle or lie in a speech. Original post, May 10th, 2024. I, 41M, have 2 kids with my ex-wife, 42F, a son John, 22, and daughter Sally, 20. I'm remarried to my wife, 28. I'm very close with my kids. My son is engaged to Abby. She seems nice but has been a bit pushy trying to create relationships with me and my wife, though she's also awkward with her. Abby isn't close to her family. She told us many stories why, and while some of her complaints don't seem awful, it's not my place to judge, and I didn't live it, so I can't know anyway. We've tried to be welcoming, but Abby has forced her way into some family traditions where she wouldn't have been invited, and some where no one outside of specific family would have. She has been calling Sally sis since they were only dating a few months, has an odd sister/mother-in-law thing she does with my wife, and the one I'm not a fan of wants me to be like father to her. Not because we've clicked or anything. We are very different people. Not saying that in a bad way, just saying it's not based on how we get along or anything. My kids and I have a tradition when they come over that we have a private catch-up in my office study before they leave, which is now even more important to them because while they both get along well with my wife, they don't want to have personal conversations around her yet. Abby asked if we could talk, and after I explained the tradition, John later asked that I do it, saying she'd never had a caring conversation with her dad. We compromised that I didn't include her in the tradition, but do join the 2 of them for coffee and let her talk. Then she started calling me Dad. They weren't even engaged yet. John pulled me aside and begged me to give her that, laid this whole thing on me about me always being the dad she always wanted right in front of her, and she just wanted that, told me she cried watching me and Sally together. She still gives me random hugs. I'm a lucky dad. I didn't like it, but I do feel bad, so fine I gave her that. She wants me to walk her down the aisle in the father-daughter dance. I don't want to walk her down, and I walk with a cane, so dancing is hard. At my own wedding I only danced twice. John is begging for me to do one, preferably the aisle. They came over Sunday. John and I were talking. I thought to address it, when Ab walked in without knocking, asking if he'd told me yet. I asked what. John said she wanted me to say something about having a second daughter now in my speech and how I loved her. I just looked at him. She asked if I'd do the walk and dance for Sally. I said, of course. She yelled, "She's my daughter too," and I said it will never be the same. Sally is my actual daughter. I tried to explain I'd talk about her being a happy addition to the family, and I love how happy she makes Jack, which I thought was a good compromise, but she started crying. John apologized and they left, but he called me when they were home, nearly begging me to. Ada, because I won't lie and say I love her or she's my daughter. Verdict, not the asshole. Update #1, June 26, 2024, 1.5 months later. I had planned on writing this sooner, but life got in the way in a couple of really good ways. But people were helpful and asked for updates, and I have a surprise-free day. So here it goes. Mother's Day. My kids and their partners go to visit my ex-wife. So it turns out my ex-wife and Abby are a lot closer than I realized. She calls her mom, which is part of where this comes from. Also, apparently, my ex has been egging it on. On Mother's Day, they were talking about the wedding, and I guess whenever Abby referred to me, it was as Dad. My son apparently told her let it go, which led to yelling. Abby about deserving to be my daughter, ex telling her that she's right, son telling her that I am trying, and she should be realistic about things. Sally telling her I only had one daughter, which was apparently a response to Abby saying to her that as my daughters, they should be united. According to my son, Abby was crying. According to Sally, she was crying, yelling, and kicked something before going to her room, and Sally told me she went off on her mom, but will not elaborate, so I don't know what was actually said. But knowing Sally, woo boy. Around 2 a.m., I got a text from Sally's partner's phone saying, "Abby really is great. She hasn't been perfect, but you should give her a chance and you will learn to love her." I saw it when I woke up. I tried to text her back, but was blocked. So I called Sally, but they were driving. They stopped by my place later that day because I am on the way and my daughter prefers my liquor and cooking, and they told me about the night before. At the end, I asked to speak to her partner alone. I asked if I had done something to upset her. She was confused, and I told her I was blocked. She said I wasn't, but checked her phone, and I was, and I said it was after her message, and she asked what message. I showed her. It was not on her phone anymore. At that point, we brought in Sally and caught her up. Neither of them were happy. A couple of days later, John and Abby dropped by unannounced. Not something we really do in this family, but okay, fine. I had mad salmon. Does not take long to cook. I cook 2 more. Wife serves while I make drinks. The entire night was Abby trying to bring up the wedding, John trying to change the subject, Abby not allowing that. We talk logistics because I am helping them get some good deals through some professional contacts I have. When finally she just says, "So I was talking to Mom. She said that you can walk me down the aisle and she'll do the dance, or you can dance and she'll walk. It's your call, but you need to choose soon." I reiterated that I could not dance. She tried arguing that I had danced a little at my wedding, but I made it clear that is different, and did not feel comfortable walking her. She got upset and said, "Mom loves me, why can't you?" I felt bad but couldn't lie. I pointed out that she had John who loved her, my ex-wife, friends. She had people who love her. She said, "But other than ex-wife, those aren't my parents." I said, "Neither am I." She was very emotional, so my wife and I gave them a few minutes. My son and I were alone later. He looked exhausted. He said the problem was that after Mother's Day, Abby had called Sally and kept saying they are both my daughters, that I did not get to be close with one but not both, and that it was them against me. But at that one, Sally cried havoc and let slip the dogs of war. Things were said. Grievances were aired. John had to hang up before it got worse, but I guess Abby was shaken, but there was a new problem. Abby had decided in her head that I did not mean what I have been saying and was just doing it for Sally. He told me he would handle it. Ron Howard. He did not. So now I get text messages from Abby every couple of days acting like we have a secret relationship Sally doesn't know about. She even called herself my secret daughter and loled. She invited my wife to lunch, saying 2 out of 3 of his girls going out. She has even started using the pressure of showing up at events like a recent barbecue to play a certain image. She hugs me more and holds it. Wants to do pictures with just me or my wife and I, but always a few with just me to post with captions I do not like. My wife is getting especially annoyed because of how she is with her. I guess Abby surprised her with Father's Day plans for me that had to be shut down. As it is, she still inserted herself into the day. But she has a soft spot for her, and when Abby gets emotional, she caves. My wife is a sweetheart. I asked him if he is upset with me, and he said no. He just wished it was different. He said we're good, but he's worried he and Sally aren't, which is when I took the advice of some people and suggested premarital counseling. He said he would talk about it. Abby is insisting Sally go to her fitting. That shop should pay-per-view that potential Royal Rumble because Sally is not holding her feelings back anymore. I told him Sally loves him and I'll talk to her, but for now it is stressful all around. Abby driving my wife crazy with her ideas for what my girls should be doing. Driving me crazy with dad-daughter content. Drove Sally to the edge and, oh yeah, last night sent me an email with 3 styles of father-daughter dances and song options, so I'm not feeling any more respected or heard than before. The 6 of us have barely been in the same room in order to let things calm down since Father's Day, which was great until it was a shit show. Sorry this is so long. With all the craziness, this is still the abridged version. We are supposed to meet Friday. Sally's partner and I have a bet going about how bad it will go. So onward and upward, I hope you fathers had a less dramatic day than I did. And by any chance does anyone know exactly how bad of a crime I need to commit to enter witness protection? Just curious. Update #2, October 2nd, 2024, 3.5 months later. I have gotten requests for updates on my situation, and as I enjoy a refreshing mojito and my wife her nojito, life feels good, and the perfect time to amuse the world with my pain and familial drama. Plus a cousin of mine who apparently reads these and knows my situation gave me the convincing argument of, "Dude, you can't keep people hanging, and how can I argue with that airtight argument?" I apologize for how long this is. A lot has happened. My wife's pregnancy is going well. Keeping her as stress-free and pampered as possible has been my focus. It is such a different experience this time, both because of how much more involved I can be and how much better a relationship I have with my wife than I had with my ex. My daughter Sally has been great. Even her partner has been great, helping with the nursery or driving her around when I can't. My wife doesn't know because it is a surprise, but my son has been building a crib for the baby, modeled after the one I built for him and his sister, to show my wife his support. My son is a good man, and he is still in there. He just has a soft spot for Abby. Which I guess gets us to the part of the movie where Godzilla shows up and starts busting up buildings. So I called a family meeting with my kids to talk about the situation. Told John his sister was only doing wedding activities she wanted to, and that the guilting requests needed to stop, that this was hurting his relationship with his sister. Sally was happy I said it, so she did not have to yet again. I told him if he did not stop her from messaging me, I would block her with a bluntly honest explanation why. We got a lot out. John seemed to understand, but then a few days later they insisted on coming to talk. Sally and I decided we would get everything out. So all of us ate at our place. Abby started in immediately about baby shower stuff, and I told that is the kind of thing we wanted to talk about. I told her that I understood she has been trying to fill a hole that she has, that she thought she was getting a father, a second mother. She calls my ex-wife Mom, apparently, and a sister. I told her it was still possible, but that she needed to start listening to us. I told her that for the sake of family, we would give her a fresh start. If she agreed that moving forward, she would respect our boundaries. My daughter did not love this idea, but loves her brother, and was willing to try. Abby tried to say that since we were starting over, we could define what the relationship would be and just be family. We told her we were not ready for that it needs to happen organically. She got mad that I am closer with my daughter's partner, which is true, but we just get along, and that she deserved it for trying so hard. My daughter said something about trying things we actually want. She ran to our bathroom. He ran after her. After a while I checked on him. I could hear her repeating, "This is not what I wanted." My wife, daughter, and her partner went out to the patio to give them privacy and salvage the night. After a bit, I got a text saying they had just left. I checked in with him the next day, and he said they talked more at home and she understood. For a couple of weeks, things were good. The texts stopped except the occasional wedding question, since it was getting closer. She stopped pushing herself on my wife and Sally, and we thought was involving us less in wedding planning out of respect, since as it was they only got the venue at the rate they did because of my professional connections. And they know I was willing to help but not interested in helping plan even if I am good at event planning. But then I got a call from the venue telling me the card I used had been declined. Now this is a specific card I use for big purchases because of the miles, so I knew it had a high limit. That was how I learned that they had changed dates by 2 months, despite being informed I would still be out much of the money because it was too close to the date. I was furious. I mean, I have been lucky in life financially, but I am not blow-off deposits like nothing wealthy. Called my son, said he needed to get his ass to the house, just him. They both came. When they arrived, I opened the door. She actually started with, "Dad!" I think I just replied, "You have got to be fin kidding me," and walked toward the table. Abby had the nerve to ask where dinner was. My response was not polite, as I made it clear that was not why they were here. I hoped my son would not lie to me, so I asked what was going on with the venue. She started going into wedding details, but my son interrupted to tell me they postponed because my ex-wife was unavailable because of a surgery, and he had not told me because he was putting money together to pay the lost money himself, and he had just reached out to guests to let them know. And that is when Abby's mouth opened. We have extra time to work on our dance. Now during this time my wife came home, and I was walking her toward the bedroom when Abby said that. My pregnant wife with me, I said calmly, "I have different feelings about that and will elaborate further shortly," or something like that. Then I laid my wife down and got her water, turned on her symphonic covers of popular songs and walked back to the table and said something like, "You are out of your mind. Have you even been listening?" I made it clear I was done with this nonsense, we all were, and kind of lost it, asking she did not hear us last time because her head was up her ass. She was stunned silent. What a beautiful sound. And looked at me while I, admittedly with little filter, explained what Sally and I thought of our time with her and her attempts to force us to love her without even getting to know us. She started crying and stood up and shouted, "Then what was this even for?" John asked what she meant, if she meant them, and he started to freak out. She was frantic and said she meant delaying the wedding. Because, and I'm pouring another drink to write this, it was a ploy. My ex-wife and her decided if I had more time I would come around. Apparently my ex told her not to worry about the money because I am loaded. She has always been bitter. I make so much more than I did when we were married, as if that is out of spite rather than my career arc. I think she did that on purpose, frankly. But she not only told me that lie, she and my ex told John as well. He was distraught, repeating, "You lied to me," as she tried to spin it, but he was letting it out about how much he has defended her and covered for her, and she lied to him too. She was defensive and blamed my ex for telling her things, and me for being stubborn. She yelled, "Why can't I just call him Dad?" And finally, after so long, I heard John respond, "Because he is not your dad." She started crying and something about his being the one that told she could call me that, and he said he told her she might be able to eventually. But he had told her again and again to slow down. She started sobbing and went to sit on her chair but missed and fell on the floor. Appreciating physical humor to break the tension, I admittedly chuckled and hid my mouth behind my drink. This all led to a lot of sobbing. I said I needed to check on my wife, and as I walked out she was repeating, "I just want him to be my dad too." I came out and he was walking her to the door and apologized. I said not to. They left. He came over a few days later and said they had a long talk at home. He even asked her if she would have dated him if there was never a chance of being in the family. He believed her when she said yes, but she admitted I was a big draw as well. I was the kind of dad she always wanted. My relationship with Sally is what she always wanted, and the way she said it gave John doubts that she loves him for him. I talked about marriage counseling, how his mother and I tried it, and while it did not save us, it provided clarity and an impartial voice. I pointed out they both like coming to me, but I cannot be impartial. And if they are trying, then they need to do it for real. Abby texted asking if I was the one who suggested therapy. I responded with, "Does it matter if John wants to?" She asked why it is so bad. She wants to know what I think, and I just said John is the man whose opinion should matter most to her. They fought due to the text. She agreed to the counseling, and the wedding has been postponed. I may have done a dance. So they are in counseling. He said she struggles, but I obviously do not know details. She is pressing for me and Sally to go to a session with her. Sally told her she did not want to hear Sally unfiltered, and I am not interested. Abby has been leaving Sally alone. She stopped texting me except for the occasional general question, which includes some attempt to go deeper. My wife still occasionally spends time with her because she is very into her pregnancy, more so than I like, but it is my wife's call. So that is where we are. Sorry it was so long, but alcohol makes for a poor editor. New update. Update #3. November 20th, 2024, 1.5 months later. I was told I should do updates here. People have been asking me to, and to get into what went down on Father's Day and at their mother's house. I have been extremely busy these last few months, but am enjoying my temporary unemployment and thought of this account because of recent Thanksgiving drama. I will do an update and then will share what happened earlier. Oh, and to whomever made the joke that Abby finally got me to dance, that made me laugh, I shared that with the family. My time has been largely caring for my wife. I tend to dote. I know. We are having a boy. We are really excited, though neither of us really had gender preference. I have raised both, and both experiences were wonderful. Now we are discussing names, who we are going to honor. I thought everything had been quiet, but recently found my wife crying and found out I was wrong. Given how busy I have been with work, and my wife knowing I would be free again once we got into this month, my wife has kept this to herself. Apparently Abby has been pushing for one Thanksgiving this year. Things have been quiet with Abby. My son said the wedding blowing up woke her up, and that therapy had been helping. But then this. My understanding is that while John has been talking less with his mother because of all that happened, Abby did the opposite. From my wife's telling, Abby dropped by one day with my ex-wife. My wife intensely dislikes my ex-wife because of lies she spread about my first marriage ending due to infidelity with her, despite there being no infidelity and the linear nature of time making it impossible for us to have slept together back then. Before anyone asks, my ex-wife does not actually think there was infidelity. I would get into that, but I am sure I would sound biased. Anyway, so my wife looked at our camera app, saw who it was, and called my daughter. Apparently the two of them were keeping things from me because I was working 18-hour days, and they did not want me dealing with anything else. I wish they had not done that, but I appreciate the thought. I am really lucky to have such caring people around me. My daughter called her mom and said something that made them leave in a hurry. She will not tell me what, but she smiles when I ask. I called John, but he was dealing with some hard work news, so I just was there for him and left the other alone. The next day, Abby came back, alone this time. My wife saw it was her and asked her what she wanted through the door. Abby said to apologize. My wife let her in, she is too nice, and after a nice talk, Abby asked about the whole family getting together for Thanksgiving. My wife said, of course. She assumed as much. A couple of days later in our group chat, we were discussing details, who brings what, and Abby asks what else is needed. I say John already committed, and she asked what about my ex-wife? What should she bring? In the time I have known Abby, she has never made an intentional joke that funny. So I asked what she was talking about, and she mentioned the whole family comment, and my daughter and I both asked what made her think we counted her as family. She actually replied, "She is my family. I don't have a dad who wants me, just a mom, and my mom deserves to be with family on Thanksgiving." Sally replied, "Well, we'll miss you and John then." Abby asks how she can say that. Sally asks how she can be so stupid. John says not to call her stupid, and I say that is fair, but there is no real way she thought my wife thought she meant my ex-wife. At this point, my wife had filled me in. And then, this is so stupid. She uses my son's phone to add my ex-frigging wife to the group chat. She then thanks us for the invitation and asks what she can bring. As I was typing, my daughter beats me to it and asks what she thinks she is doing. She knows she is not welcome, but says it less politely. My wife types, "You could not have thought she was included when I said family." Abby responded that she was not coming as my family but as hers. Sally let her mom have it. She already is not talking to her much and said, "If my ex-wife is there, then she is not." I mentioned there was never a chance X was going to come and said I understand Abby and John wanting to go to their mom's house so she is not alone. John typed, "Plans not definite, will let you know." He has since told me that he is not going to go to his mom's place, but wanted to tell Abby alone first. All I can think about is the comment about not having a dad who wants her, because it means she is still thinking about me as a dad, I believe, just a negligent one. I mentioned that to my son, and he said he noticed it too and had brought it up at therapy because family is such a frequent topic, though I obviously do not know details. Wow, I thought this would be brief. But that was a lot. I will get into the crazy stories later if there are people seeing this who want me to. I do not know how posting from here works in terms of anyone seeing it, but this has been good to get out. Relevant comment? Commenter 1. Someone needs to explain sunk cost fallacy to John. I genuinely cannot believe he is still with her after the sheer volume of times she has disrespected him, his boundaries, and your family. Maybe this was back in an earlier post, but has anyone really taken the time to reason with him that there are other women out there and he deserves so much better than this kind of relationship? OP. I had a talk when this started. So did his sister. After the blow-up with the wedding, his sister and I took him out for a game and some time to really talk after. That was when he apparently demanded counseling. I am happy that for now marriage is on hold at least. He is seeing her a bit more honestly, but is still too optimistic in my view. OOP needs to let his wife know not to let Abby in when he's not home. P. I have asked my wife to never let her in if I am not here after last time. Well, actually, I had already asked her, but after the last incident, my wife has agreed. You are exactly correct that she takes advantage of my wife's kindness. Though once our boy is here, I think she will be very protective and will hold strong. I have told John that Abby will not be holding our baby, at least for the foreseeable future. OOP and his daughter need to have a serious talk with his son about Abby. OOP. His sister and I had a serious conversation with him a little after everything blew up. It seems to be what inspired both his demand for counseling and putting the marriage on hold. He is better about seeing her honestly. His sister said something about Abby having similarities to their mother, which would have been fighting words from anyone else, and I saw the temper that rarely comes out. But then he listened because she clearly put thought into it. I never thought about it. I am proud to have kids smarter than me. I know my boy don't come off a genius in these posts, and F's are enough in that department, but professionally he is brilliant. She laid her reasoning out in excruciating detail. He listened, though, because she was not enjoying it at all. It was sincere. Some seem to have clicked because since that talk he has been different with her. I just am not getting my hopes up. Commenter 2. When two crazies are feeding off each other's crazy, they can start thinking anything is possible. I have a feeling that even if your son leaves her, she's not going to go away peacefully. Her and your ex sound like peas in a pod, unfortunately. OOP. My daughter really went at him pointing out their similarities. She made her case well, and thankfully it shook him up. Story 7. My M39 wife, F37, is forcing our son, M12, to quit gymnastics because she thinks it'll ruin his purity. Original post, Raredit, February 9th, 2021. This is the latest in a string of disagreements that we've recently begun to have regarding our son as he enters his teen years. I met my wife in youth group before eventually getting married years later, but she's also been the more stricter one between us, and while I believe in being strict to a point, I believe there are some times when she's been unreasonably strict, times where I've had to step in and put my foot down. I remember when our son asked to skip youth group on a Friday to go to a friend's birthday party, but she said no because God is supposed to come first, And while I get that, I told her she was being unreasonable, along with how missing an occasional Friday wouldn't hurt. A similar conversation took place on one of his birthdays, when he wanted to sleep in, but she wanted him to come. I again chose to tell her that it wasn't a big deal, and although he was allowed to stay home in the end, she was upset in the car and most of the time at church. In addition to this, she doesn't want him to have friends who aren't Christians either, and that was one of the bigger arguments we had. When I asked her why she felt like that, she pointed to many mistakes that she made after drifting from God after graduating high school and thinking that she didn't need him, and that she was trying to help him avoid doing the same thing and stuff like that. I told her that while I understood where she was coming from, forcing him to go to something he doesn't want to will not help him long-term and only make him resentful later on, but she's convinced that he'll turn to drinking and other stuff like she did, and she often says those memories often stick with her to the point where she doesn't want him ever having to live her mistakes. The reason I'm writing this is because of our latest argument. She wants him to quit gymnastics because she thinks that being around a bunch of girls in tights is unhealthy, along with how God wants us to shield our eyes from things that could distract us from Him. She also says the sport provides a lot of easy opportunities for him to become lustful in an environment that seems completely normal, and I already knew that trying to talk her out of this one would be almost pointless, but I tried nonetheless. I told her that while she can think whatever she wants, it doesn't mean that others will think the same way. I also told her that there's nothing immoral about doing gymnastics, and especially since he's passionate about it, but she said she didn't want him around an environment that often harbored girls of different ages, and that the last thing she wanted was for him to start looking at younger girls. This is where I snapped and told her that while I supported her desire to talk to him about purity, that she is wrong for putting her religious bias in everything and assuming the worst for our son. I also told her that she is wrong for assuming our son would think like that, along with how she's wrong for viewing gymnastics in that light. She then told me that she'll no longer drive him or allow him to go at the end of his current class, and I told her that she's wrong and constantly over the top about everything, along with how she's presenting a demented example of Christianity to him. I then went to bed, since I had work in the morning, and the conversation took place right when I was heading to bed, but she said wanted to talk to me first. When I went to work today, my son called me and told me what she said, that she had told him that this would be his last semester in gymnastics, along with saying that it is her duty to protect him while he lives under our roof. When I came home today, I wanted to talk to her over dinner, and I told him that he could take his food upstairs. But she told him that we were going to eat at the table, and when we were done, she said that her decision was final, since she is the one who has to drive him in the first place, and when I tried to talk to her, she didn't want to hear it. Eventually, I told my son that I would talk to her, and not to worry about anything, and he looked a bit better after I said that, probably because he knew I usually sided with him, but I'm slightly torn on this one. She's the one who drives him, and she's the only one who can while I'm at work. I'm considering asking someone else to carpool him, but I'm disgusted by the fact that I even have to do that. But my main issue is how she doesn't want to renew him at the end of the semester, so I'm considering using my own money to pay for it myself. But since our finances are combined, I know she'll throw a fit about it, and there's still the issue of how he's getting there. I'm open to any advice that I can get to make this work. I believe that she's wrong and that he shouldn't have to quit just because of her assumptions, but I also know that the real issue lies within our marriage. I've suggested counseling to her, but she refuses to go, so I went by myself for a while, and it did do some good. I want to make things work, and I understand that she's been through a lot, thus why she's so adamant about him staying close to God. But I disagree with the way she's going about it, and I'm questioning if I'll ever be able to fully get through to her. TLDR. My wife wants my son to quit gymnastics because she thinks that being in the environment will make him lustful, along with how she doesn't want him surrounded by girls in tights because it's unhealthy, based off of her personal experiences of running away from God and making mistakes before coming back to Him, thus why she's big on purity and other stuff as well. Update. Raredit. February 15th, 2021. It's been a couple of days since my original post, so I'll get right into it. The short version of last time was that my wife wanted my son to quit gymnastics because she thinks that being around other girls in gymnastics apparel would cause his mind to lust and be ungodly, and this is in the aftermath of her talking to him about purity and whatnot. Over the years, I've been too passive about her ways. When she guilted him into wanting to skip a single youth group meeting to go to a birthday party, all under the impression that God is supposed to come first in everything. She also doesn't want him having friends who aren't Christian because she thinks that that will push him further away from God. And I consider this a contradiction to the Great Commission that is in the New Testament. Not that I'm someone who advocates trying to bring religion into every conversation and come off as that weird person, but Jesus spent the majority of his time around people who weren't perfect saints, the opposite of what she's mandated. When she tried to force him to skip the party to put him first, I overruled it, taking the easy way out. When he wanted to hang out with friends who weren't necessarily Christians and she threw a fit, I wanted to tell her that that's a form of being prejudiced by judging someone based off an imaginary image in our heads that has nothing to do with their actual character and before even meeting them. But I took the easy way again and just told him he was fine to keep them, when I believed that that shouldn't have been an issue in the first place. I did the same thing again in regards to the purity talks that she wanted to have with him too, and I agreed and let her have them, although I was rather quiet during the talk that we had, and I now regret and realize just how much of a mistake that was for these reasons. Being completely honest, this whole situation that has been brewing for years has made me grow tired of her religious nonsense and somewhat religion as a whole, since it can sometimes become a scapegoat for petty beliefs that people want to promote under the guise of something like that, and I think it's very manipulative. For years I did nothing because the thought of separation and the opinions that would follow from our church and parents and friends would be overwhelming, considering how some really consider it taboo to get divorced even if it's none of their business. But to be honest, I don't really care anymore. I've been growing more numb to religion over the past few years because of her, and after hearing her suggest that our son would look at girls in the very same environment that he's grown up around for years in a lustful way, just doesn't sit well with me, and that's putting it nicely. She's sexualizing a sport, and suggested that our son could become a predator if he stayed, and that has resonated more than anything else she's ever done, along with making me wonder if she doesn't have that kind of mindset herself already. So, what did I do? Before doing anything, I decided to talk to her one-on-one about the matter. I asked if she had anything against gymnastics personally, and I told her that trying to make him quit would only make him hate us. She replied something along the lines of how the world has a habit of making everything that isn't sexual, and that the gymnastics environment promotes girls in clothing that can be easily looked at wrongfully, then going on to say stuff about how God wants us to have clean eyes and stuff like that. When I suggested that perhaps she was projecting her personal problems on her, which I debated if it'd be too harsh to say but chose to anyway, she just said no and didn't want to talk about it. I eventually asked if she'd be willing to go to counseling with me, a professional counselor who we'd find within the area. She said no, and then I offered talking to someone inside the church second, but she became defensive and said that I was trying to embarrass her in front of her friends, to which I told her wasn't true, but that she wasn't cooperating when a marriage is supposed to be about working things out. She then proceeded to get upset and say that I'm wrong for allowing our son to stay in an environment where he'll grow older as younger girls keep coming in, and that it says a lot about what I'm comfortable about looking at by allowing him to do so. And I was done after that, since I felt she was accusing me of being unfaithful simply because I don't think he should quit gymnastics. Sure, I could talk to other parents and try to arrange a carpool, and I could drive him myself if I could get off early enough from work on some days too, but I can't control what she does at the home when I'm not there, since she already talked to him behind my back on numerous occasions while I'm at work, trying to explain why she wants him to quit and whatnot. And if she doesn't want to talk or cooperate with me, then what more can I do? I talked to my son, told him that we'd be going up to my parents for the weekend, and potentially a bit longer, and I was direct in telling him why. I told him again that I'm on his side and that she is sexualizing a sport and minors in a way that is very inappropriate, and that the last thing we need is to deal with that as he goes into his teen years. I also apologized for enabling her for so many years while being afraid of the idea of separation, and while I heavily debated whether or not I should be this direct about explaining everything at his age. I did because I didn't want him to feel that I kept things from him as he grew older and throughout this situation. And I also told him how it was making me stressed at work and unable to focus on my job, which allowed him to open up and tell me that he feels guilty about wanting to go, which I told him was wrong and that he has nothing to feel guilty about. But the fact that she made him even have these doubts is something that didn't need to exist in the first place. And my parents are helping me look into a lawyer and other ways to comfort him. A lot of this is on me for allowing it to go on for too long, but I just want to know how to help him with the guilt that he voiced in the aftermath of her words. Besides telling him that I'm on his side and that she's wrong, she's already implanted that doubt whenever he's in the gym now, and I just want to help him navigate it to the best that I can and undo the damage that her bullshit has caused. As for my wife, she didn't know that we left until after we got there, but I told her exactly why we had left, and she was slightly apologetic on the phone. I asked her again if she'd be willing to go to counseling, but she accused me of trying to manipulate her into going, so I told her to call back if she had a change of heart. But my main priority remains undoing the damage she's done to him while recovering mentally myself and potentially working through a separation unless she shows that she's willing to change, which I have my doubts about, considering we left and she still wouldn't consider counseling. Just being up here, though, is more peaceful and needed from the stress of work and being in that home. TLDR. I talked to my wife again, but she accused me of being unfaithful by allowing him to continue going to gymnastics, and that was my last straw. I also asked her if she'd be willing to go to counseling, and she refused again. I'm currently staying with my parents at the moment while trying to figure out how to help my son through the doubt that he's expressed about going to the gym, that she created thanks to her bullshit from her past, that she's unwilling to confront. Final update, March 14th, 2021. It's been almost a month, so I wanted to come back to this. I'm not going to lie, I'm really tired at this point, and I wrote a lot the last 2 times, but I don't think I will this time because I'm really losing my energy about it. Basically, when we were still staying at my parents', I told her why we left, and that I'd return if she had a change of heart when we first talked, but she refused to budge on her stance that it is inappropriate for him at his age to be in the same gym at little kids, and preferably girls from a purity standpoint, since she believes that the world has a habit of turning everything that isn't sexual into something sexual. And she believes that the sport just serves as eye candy to lustful people who can watch girl run around in leotards, as she often points out. And she's told him this bullshit while I'm at work, and it drove me crazy. I couldn't focus when in the back of my mind she's at home telling him shit that I'll have to undo later, and I've stated in my update that a lot of her behavior is on me for being lax over the years. But I'm trying to do better, but it's been really stressful, and it still is almost a month later. When we were at my parents', we stayed there for a little while, but she began to tell her parents and mutual friends false things about me, to the point where her parents and some of them began to call me or message me on her behalf and call me a bad husband along with other things, and apparently she told them that I kidnapped our son, along with other things about how I'm this horrible person because of her lies, not to mention something about me putting my hands on her once too, which I swear never happened once in our life, or even when we were talking about going to counseling. My parents told me that she was trying to guilt me into returning under her terms, and that I should continue to stay with them because she has truly gone off the rails, and we've been here ever since. But I've taken a leave from work because my mind hasn't been in a good place for over a month. And that's from everything that happened at our house, and the new lies and the stress my son feels, and finding a lawyer and researching other legal things with my parents. And it's taken a lot of time out of my parents' lives too, but they've been amazing, and I want to thank them when it's all over, and even before then. From talking to the police and organizing documentation for them and my lawyer, I'm tired right now, and my parents are too, But we're still trying to figure it out and know that this will probably be a long process, and I don't care how much it costs to debunk her lies and get us both into therapy. My son, however, does not want to go, and I told him alongside my parents that he could go with me or alone only if he wanted to, and that we weren't forcing him. But he said he didn't want to at the time, so we've left it for a bit instead of forcing the issue, and I've begun talking to one in my spare time online as well, and my parents are helping me pay for it a little. However, my son doesn't want to do gymnastics anymore, and he's still hard on himself for everything that's transpired, despite the many times me and my parents have tried to assure him that nothing is his fault. All of it is mine for letting her go down this slippery slope for so long, but he's had no desire to do it and has voiced guilt about being around girls and making them uncomfortable without even knowing he was. But I told him that that was his mom putting that in his head and that it isn't true. But I regret going along with her desire to teach purity and keeping us in a church that ostracizes people for having an abortion, like one girl I mentioned in my second update. The same church that she has spread her lies to about me, and I have no intention of ever returning there again. In regards to his schooling, that's another mess at the moment. He hasn't been in class because she went to them too, and my lawyer thinks it's best to hold off on that for the moment for his well-being with others, and the fact that she could show up there herself. But he wants him to go back sooner rather than later, and I do too, and I'm trying to see if there's a way that he can do most of his work online or something. But I'm still working on that at the moment. But most importantly, I'm trying to help encourage him to speak to someone for how he feels that's far beyond how I'm able to help him from a professional standpoint, and standing by him until he decides to do anything else. From a mental standpoint, he feels guilty, like I said, not just for what happened with Mom, but about the things she said to him about him lusting after girls without him knowing it at gymnastics, stuff that I don't want him developing a complex about over her nonsense. But my other main priority is getting a divorce after this last straw. I can't take it anymore, and I don't know how much longer this will continue. Probably a while, but he's tired of gymnastics and not in a good state right now. And my parents think it's best to probably have him go to see someone sooner rather than later, which is why I'm probably going to make him go at some point, although I don't know the best way to do that without coming off as forceful in a way that he'll resent. And if anyone has any advice on how to make him go in a way that doesn't make him upset or resentful or unwilling to potentially help us with some of the legal stuff she might have said to him. Although I know that that is not my first priority. I'd really appreciate that, as it hasn't been easy on him, and I just want it to be over. But I'm aware that this is the consequence of letting her get away with small things over the years that boiled into this. But if we can come out all right, then maybe we can both somehow be stronger at the end of it. TLDR. My wife has begun to tell lies about me to her friends, her family, our church, and our school in regards to me taking my son to my parents to try and make us return. Story 8. My best friend accidentally sent me a text about secretly hating me. Original post, November 24th, 2024. Hi everyone, longtime listener of THT and FKS, looking for advice or comfort, as I am truly heartbroken. I, 20F, and my best friend 21F have been friends since high school. Now we are a part of the same college friend group. Friday night, everyone was hanging out together like we typically do on the weekends. I had 1 drink, and my best friend had 3, 4 drinks before we went back to her house. Everything was totally normal. I wasn't exactly planning to stay the night, but she pleaded with me and said we could get breakfast in the morning if I stayed. I obliged, and she told me she was going to sleep alone in her room so that she could call her long-distance boyfriend. So, after telling each other, "I love you, good night," and giving hugs, I went to go sleep in the guest room. About 20 minutes later, I received a text from her that read, "She's staying in the guest room, so I don't want to shit-talk her too loudly." I responded with a simple, "Huh?" and received another longer text complaining about how she just can't figure out a respectful way to get rid of me. It was probably around 2:45 a.m. at this point, but I packed up all of my things and snuck out the back door. The next morning she sent me a voice memo apologizing and saying that she was drunk and meant to text her boyfriend, but I'm just not that fun anymore, and we've grown apart. My heart is broken. It feels wrong to bring it up to anyone else in our group of friends, so I've spent the last few days grieving and trying to remind myself that I'm only 20 and can still bounce back and find new friends. Unfortunately, my 21st birthday is in a few weeks, and now I fear I won't have anyone to spend it with. I guess posting this and venting anonymously online to a bunch of strangers might help? I'm not sure, but while I wait for my emergency therapy appointment tomorrow, any advice is appreciated. Relevant comment. Commenter 1. Why does this one friendship growing apart prohibit you from hanging out with the rest of your friend group? P. They were her friends first and she's much closer to everyone. I'm pretty shy and take a long time to warm up to people, and I wouldn't want to make things uncomfortable by continuing to be around everyone else. Commenter 2. Convincing you to stay just to act frustrated that you won't leave is such strange behavior. IDK about her normal behavior outside of this incident, but that sounds like the type of person who'll twist anything so that they sound like the wronged party. No reasoning with those types at all. OOP. I agree. I was very much caught off guard. An hour before, we were talking about planning a trip for spring break. No fights, no arguments, no weird vibes at all beforehand. Was there a bad situation between OOP and her best friend? OOP. Not a frenemy situation at all. We've never fought or had any disagreements at all in our several years of friendship. Trust me, I am just as confused LOL. Commenter 3. I would tell everyone and show them the text messages too, but I'm petty. OP. Trust me, I wanted to send the screenshots to everyone so badly. I just figured it would be better to stop investing any energy at all and focus on finding better. OOP clarifies on if she attends the same college with her best friend. OOP. We don't go to the same college. I go to a school about 20 miles away, so I don't live with her. We just remained close friends after high school and lived close enough to each other to make our friendship work. Update. November 27th, 2024. Hi everyone. I want to begin by thanking you all for the love and support on my first post. People have been asking me to update. I wasn't sure exactly how to do so, but hopefully this works. Last night I went to my now ex-friend's house to pick up some items left during my rushed exit the other night. Ex-friend is visiting family out of state for Thanksgiving, so she wasn't present. However, one of her roommates, Rachel, was there, and we ended up having a little chat about what happened. Rachel and I are pretty close, so I felt comfortable showing her what happened. She was just as shocked and confused when reading through the messages, and assured me that I did nothing wrong. She also promised me that everyone else in our friend group loves me, and wants me around regardless of what ex-friend may think. She told me that she's going to sit ex-bestie down when she gets home and call her out on her BS. I do feel pretty guilty about potentially turning the friend group away from ex-bestie, but I'm choosing to let her actions speak for themselves. I do still plan on taking a little step back from everyone else in the group, though. As much as I truly do love my other friends, I know that after this I won't feel safe enough to come around all the time and truly be myself. I think it's going to take me some time before I can be around everyone without overanalyzing my every move. I'm a big overthinker, people-pleaser, so I know that the next few interactions with everyone, I'll be laser-focused on whether or not I'm being fun enough, which wouldn't be very fun for me, LOL. As for my birthday, I'll be spending it with family, as many of you suggested. In the end, I am glad to have gotten some kind of validation from someone else in the group. And everyone's kind words on here really helped as well. So thank you, THT fam. Top comments. Commenter 1. So one thing I also try to remember, and it's hard sometimes, is that when somebody does something like this that is super out of character and inconsistent with their behavior, it often has nothing to do with you. It's about whatever weird shit is going on in their heads. I think you would be making a mistake to distance yourself from your friends. If things are going to be awkward, let them be awkward for her. She's the one who misbehaved. Your friends are your friends, and that's more important than that they're also her friends. You also don't have to take the bullet of feeling guilty for turning the friend group away. You have a unilateral right to talk about your life with your friends. You don't have to pretend that things are fine when they're not. And in fact, you're doing your friends a disservice by not giving them a chance to show up for you. People like showing up for their friends, within reason. Commenter 2, good for you. You are so strong and on the right path. Let her actions speak for themselves, and remember it's not your fault she decided to speak that way about you. Sending all the love. Story 9. Ada for not letting my husband control the money in our house? Original post. July 30th, 2024. My husband and I have been married for over a year, and he knows what I make hourly, but I don't just hand money over to him. Backstory. 10 years my kid's dad took control of my bank account and income, spent my savings, and gave me an allowance of $50 a week from my check. This had to cover gas, groceries, and diapers. I gave birth to our second child a year and a half later and would walk to the store so I would have gas for work. One day, I had to mad with decision on buying diapers for my oldest or my newborn. I cried in the diaper section because I couldn't believe my life had gotten to this point. You'll never forget the kind person who purchased the diapers for my children and gave me extra money to hide. When I had gotten home, I was belittled and accused of stealing money to buy so much. When I explained $50 a week for 4 of us, including diapers, wasn't enough, he told me to figure it out. I asked for $100 a week. Eventually, I convinced him to allow me more money. 3 months later, I left and swore I'd never allow another man to do that again. Present day, 10 years later, my husband was fully aware that I came with about $18,000 in credit card debt. I've successfully paid almost all of it in full in 2 years. Made it possible by not having my own house, leech of an ex with 4 kids and no utilities, am responsible for groceries for our family of 5, phone bill for us, and car insurance. I have my car payment and 1 credit card. My husband pays the utilities and house payment. We recently purchased a new-to-us camper, and he took a loan on it and put the money I got from my totaled camper in the bank. So he has that as well as his vehicle payment. He says I should be giving him $300 or more a month for savings and to help with the utilities, and I won't. If something happens to him, I can't access that account to pay bills, etc. I don't believe him on his account at all. I opened an account 5 months ago and have $250 a check placed into it for safekeeping. I also must get school supplies, kids' clothes, etc. His ex-wife, they split the cost 50/50ths for their daughter, but my ex and I are not on those types of terms. My husband gets huffy that my situation isn't like his, but I told him it is what it is. Every pay period he will ask me for money for utilities and I brush it off or say if you buy groceries, sure. He says I don't know how to save money and he should have what is left of my check each week for vacation, going to dinner, etc. I won't do it. The mere thought of having an allowance again terrifies me. Do I overspend some weeks? Yes, but I don't use a credit card to buy items anymore. I don't rob Peter to pay Paul like I did in 2020. I budget right down to coupons for groceries and what my grocery bill will be before I enter the store. He says I need to trust him and let him hold on to all of our money together because his savings account is my savings account also. I just can't bring myself to do this unless I can have full access to the account as well. I don't see that being an option. He recently sold a vehicle and put $16,000 in the savings and gave me $1,000 to spend on whatever I wanted to. So I put $200 in the bank, bought my kids each one Christmas gift early, at a friend's house so I don't hand it over now that we're on sale, and I paid $200 a piece per item, ordered myself new glasses, $275, and contacts, $150. I wanted a hoodie for $20, and he said, I gave you money, did you spend it already? I said, kind of. He knew what I did with it, and he said he wasn't buying the hoodie because I'm irresponsible with money, and he should have never given me the $1,000 and asked for receipts on everything I bought. He knew I went to the eye doctor, he knew how much I paid, and he knew about the gifts I got now because I saved more than I spent on the Christmas gifts. He's been very pushy about just holding all the money that his friends are beginning to make comments about it. Telling me I need to pay when we go out for drinks, telling me I need to pull that debit card out and pay the tab. I probably have $10,000 in the bank. I leave the tip. I don't drink when we go out aside from water. Occasionally we'll have a sipper, but I won't risk a DUI. I tip because the bartenders are usually really good making sure my water is full all the time and I never go without it, so I take care of them. Ada for not letting my husband have control of all the money? Edit. I want to be clear the debt I acquired and had when we moved in together was from a past relationship, taking a huge pay cut and COVID. During COVID, it killed my income. I hardly worked and was continuing looking for work while homeschooling both my kids. I robbed Peter to pay Paul, and my ex-BF who lived with me didn't want to help with anything and was a huge financial burden. I had to get that reeled in. Edit 2. Our incomes are similar currently. In January, I was put up for a promotion, and once my training is complete, my monthly income will be 1.5 more than his current monthly income. My current income base off his base pay, and not OT yearly, is about $6,000 a year difference annually, and can go up to $20,000 with OT. Edit 3. His bills amount to roughly $700 a month. House is $400, leaving $300 openly for gas, water, electric. Mine, car insurance, $250 a month. It just changed again because he sold a vehicle and bought a different one. Last month, it was $337. Phone a little over $264.03, includes internet, groceries, which range weekly from $200 to $400 a week depending on produce, meat purchasing, etc., which is a big reason why I haven't been helping with household bills. I also pay for all streaming services, which can be ridiculous too. ATA has no consensus bot. OP was NTA. Additional information from OOP on the finances towards mortgage, bills, etc. OP. When we agreed to move in together and I gave up my rental home, he paid for everything so I could pay the debt off and purchase a vehicle. I couldn't afford the car payment prior to moving in any longer, so I sold it back to the dealership. I borrowed a vehicle from my sister for 4 months till I got some of my stuff paid down and bought a new car with a lower payment. After about 5 months of relying on him for everything, he asked if I wanted to cover groceries since I do the cooking, home inventory, toiletries, kitchen supplies, etc., and I took that on as well as taking the phone bill and car insurance. He said since the house and utilities were in his name and my kids and I moving in didn't change much aside from water, he wasn't concerned on me paying those because the main thing in the house that has went up is groceries. We had balanced it out with the house payment and utilities being about $650, $700 in total. Myself paying for car insurance $300 for 3 vehicles and a camper, phone payment $200, as well as being the person to buy all the groceries, it was an even enough that he pays the utilities and house. Relevant comment. Commenter 1. NTA. He doesn't need to have your money that's yours. Is there a massive difference in income? Is there a massive difference in what he pays out for monthly bills? OP. From my understanding, with me paying for groceries, I pay out more than he does, because let's face it, grocery costs have tripled. I want to say, including house and utilities alone, it's about $700 a month on an extremely hot month or cold month for heat and AC. Phones and vehicle insurance costs $500 a month, and add groceries, which, depending on what I buy, can be $200 to $400 a week. OP should be cautious on having a joint account with her husband, likely to be financially abusive. OP. He says it is part of being married. My sister has been married for 20 years, and they don't share bank accounts. So to me, having their own account is normal. I've never been married before. He's also made a comment about how not allowing him access to my money is him hiding what I have, so I can plan to leave in the future. Does OOP or her husband earn more money than the other? P, he's been the breadwinner. But I've recently been placed for a promotion which will jump my income by $1,000 a month or more. Before this news, he was pushy about wanting all the information on my money. Now that it is getting closer, he is pushing harder. When I buy something for myself, I got a pair of shoes for walking, he asked if I got my raise, and I just say I wish. He said when I do, I have to give him $500 of it so he can keep it for safekeeping. Update, November 28, 2024, 4 months later. I took some of your suggestions previously, asked him to go to marriage counseling, and he declined because he didn't have any issues in our marriage except me. Suggested a joint bank account for bills and bills alone, and we have separate accounts for our savings. This argument was pretty much the end of our marriage for me. I opened my own savings account at a different bank than I currently banked through. I didn't have a debit card, and if I needed to pull money out, I had to physically go to the bank. I picked up side cleaning jobs for spending money so I wouldn't really touch either account I had. We went to a sporting event with our children. I have two, he has one from previous relationships. After the event, the kids wanted fast food, which was okay by me. It was late and I didn't want to cook. He asked me when we won the lottery and I told him I didn't feel like cooking, so it was fine, and handed him $20. 3 days later, I went to work. Apparently, he had other decisions that came with the money in his account that he wanted me to put money into. I came home to the ugliest damn car in our driveway. He wasn't home. He was at the bar, so when he pulled in the driveway, I pretended to be sleeping so I wouldn't blow up that night on him. Since he had been drinking for 5 hours, I knew it wasn't the best idea anyway. He was mad at me when I woke up in the morning because I didn't say goodnight to him and was asleep by the time he got home. He said I don't have to worry because he was going to take a loan out on the car to put the money back in his savings account. The same thing he did with the camper when I gave him money for it. Had I actually given him money to put in the savings account, it wasn't our money, it was his money. Financial decisions were his and his alone, apparently. I started looking for an apartment when I got to work, and within 3 hours I was signing paperwork and getting a cashier's check for a security deposit. I told him the day before I was moving that I was leaving, and he asked me how I could this without taking to him. I said, well, you bought a car without talking to me first, so I got an apartment without your permission. Filed for divorce on my birthday. I've been called a gold digger, accused of having an affair and being blamed for his financial problems he is currently in. The camper I practically paid for, and he decided to get a loan on it to have money in his savings account. He doesn't want any more, and said I have to pay for the cost of the loan to get it out from under him when I don't see why I should have to. Since I gave him cash, I don't have a trail on what it was for when I gave him the money, nor did he ever put it in the bank after I gave it to him. So if I want the camper, I don't really have a choice but to do it. He's asked for cash for the camper, and I literally laughed out loud at him and said I did that once already and I'm not doing it again and having to pay additional anymore. He calls me asking me for the truth, and if I was really cheating on him, and that caused for me to leave because I wasn't watering his garden. I told him marriages end for others' things, and not just affairs, and told him to seek therapy because he has a lot of unresolved issues from his previous marriages if he assumes I cheated on him. I'm getting a divorce. After divorce, I'll be looking to purchase my own home and having absolutely no contact with him. My children and I are thriving already in our little apartment, and I'm managing my money very well. He wanted someone to depend on him and need him. That just wasn't me. OOP on her ex's prior marriages. OOP. Both his ex-wives are remarried, and he's friends with them. I didn't think if they were all friends that their marriages ended badly. Commenter 1. People like your STB ex-husband are very good at deceiving their evil. They look for a victim who's already been traumatized and then play their cards right so that you feel safe in them. Once they have you in a position they feel they have you controlled, they slowly start tightening the noose. Comments about an outfit or plans you made, financial control, a little shove, and then an immediate apology. Different methods, the end result is all the same. Control. Congratulations for getting out of that. OOPP. He had everyone fooled. My friends would call him and ask for permission for me to go places with them and not mention it to me first, so it would be a surprise after a while so I could escape. The weight that lifted off my shoulders once everything was in my apartment was breathtaking. He kept saying in the beginning, all I wanted was freedom, so I would text him the definition of what it meant, and said yes, it's nice to no longer be in prison. Story 10. My parents withheld a diagnosis from me for 15 years. Original post. June 1, 2024. IF-18 had an interesting childhood. I spent my early years being taken to several neurologists and psychiatrists because I had severe developmental delay. At first I was told I had a neurodevelopmental disorder, ASD, but my parents dismissed it and sought another opinion. I've always been told the diagnosis was actually incorrect because it wasn't carried out properly. I was 3 years old at the time of the diagnosis. My parents keep all their medical records in a box in the attic of our house. My medical records are also there, and I check them from time to time. Today I found my ASD diagnosis report and read it. 7 tests were carried out to diagnose it by psychologists, and one of the tests involved my parents. The report clearly states I have ASD. There is another note by a psychiatrist that also states I had ASD when I was 5 years old. My speech therapist's reports also say I exhibited symptoms of ASD. There are no other documents related to the ASD. It seems like this condition is lifelong and does not go away. I still don't fully believe the diagnosis, especially after a lifetime of my parents pretending it wasn't there, and it makes me wonder if it was a valid diagnosis. However, all the signs point out to my parents deliberately hiding this from me for 15 years. It's not a condition that will kill me, but it would have been nice to know when I got bullied, or my mental health got worse, and I wondered what was wrong with me. I don't know if I should tell my parents, or I should tell anyone, or I should tell a doctor, or what I can do with my shiny new, actually really old diagnosis. I am at a loss, and it is the second time my parents withhold a medical diagnosis from me. TLDR. I was diagnosed with ASD as a child, and my parents dismissed it for 15 years. I just found out. I don't know what I should do with it, or my parents. Top comments. Commenter, you know better than us if you are likely to get anything positive out of confronting your parents. You are 18 now and can seek out a confirmation or dismissal of this diagnosis if you want. If you do have ASD, it can help you figure out your own reactions and feelings, and you can work with a psychologist or therapist in whatever areas you want. If that's not something you can reasonably do right now, you can always do it in the future. Update, November 17th, 2024, 5.5 months later. It's almost been half a year. I ended up confronting my parents. I am 18F. Shortly after I wrote that post, I set out to find out if the diagnosis was true. I found and called the doctors who diagnosed me. I met with professionals. I even made a 2-hour trip to an ASD association before work. I had a summer job at the time. All of these confirmed that the diagnosis was true. I was offered retesting, but it's no longer free as I'm now 18. I hadn't thought of confronting my parents because I was scared of their reaction. On the day I left to go to the association, I left home very early, and my mom noticed my absence. I was very scared. I told her a lie at first, but then told her the truth and explained everything to her. She denied I had ASD at first, but then she changed her mind. She said she knew all along and nobody had actually suggested the diagnosis had been incorrect. I asked her when she'd planned on telling me. She said she didn't know. She offered me some emotional support. My dad was involved in the conversation at some point. He denied everything and brushed me off as being overly anxious. He then asked if I wanted to drop out of university and go to a psychiatric institution. I love my parents, but I don't know how to feel. I resent them a little. I feel like I should have been told at some point. A lot of things in my life, especially in my early childhood, make sense now. But maybe they would have never made sense if I had not discovered my old diagnosis. Sometimes I think I could have had a better life if I had known and received support. TLDR. Parents hid a diagnosis from me for 15 years. I found out and confronted them. Dad denied it. Mom said she knew all along.